Welcome into the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. We have a very unusual story for you today, and an entertaining one at that. Now, I'll tell you folks, there's different type of crimes out there. You know, typically on this program, you get the murderous crimes, you get the drug smuggling crimes. But we're going to talk about a different kind of crime today. We're going to talk about the type of crime that some people would say is a victimless crime, but it's not. We're going to talk today about the plastic magician. We're going to talk today to Ronnie Baker. We're not going to get too much into his story because I want to get the story from the man himself. We're going to go back to the Vietnam era. We're going to talk to a man who originally started with drugs, started drug smuggling, which, you know, in that respect is a different type of crime, but then figured out a way to switch his focus. And we'll get this story from him himself. From there, this story gets bizarre. He started innocently enough. You know, you start a little bit here, a little bit there, but then he meets up with a drug lord and it gets out of control, folks. I can't do this story justice. Our guest, Ronnie Baker, can do this so much more. We'll put it this way. Ronnie grew up in Miami Beach. He then was raised in the Bronx since the age of 5. We'll go on from there. Let's get the story from the man himself. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome into True Crime Tuesday, Ronnie Baker. Ronnie, thank you so much for being with us today.
How are you doing, Tim? Great to hear you.
The pleasure.
I just want to thank you, first of all, for giving me this opportunity to relate my story. I'm sure your audience is going to be overwhelmed with the adventures that I've gone through and how I got to the point of writing the book, The Plastic Magician. I started out, like you said, working out in Wall Street. I was working on the floor of the New York Stock Exchange and going to the New York School of Finance and Hunter College when I got drafted. I went to Vietnam, and when I was in Vietnam, after a firefight that lasted for 3 days, I was wounded and wound up in the hospital for 30 days.
Well, Ronnie, I want to slow things down a little bit. I want to get to know you a little bit from childhood. So let's rewind a little bit here first. Because okay. I find that the beginning of your life rather fascinating as well. So you started, you were born in Miami Beach. You go to the Bronx. I'm going to find a little bit from your upbringing in the Bronx, because I don't want to skip over this part either, because I find the formation of your childhood has a lot to do with decisions that you make as you're older. Did you get into any trouble as a child?
No, believe it or not, I wasn't the ideal child. I did get caught stealing from a store called Macy's, but I put some clothes on. I went in with a raincoat and just a pair of underwear and was walking out with a suit, shoes, and everything. And it turns out that right when I walked out of the door, an officer was chasing me and caught me at the bus stop and brought me back in. And it seems like one of the labels on my socks was still exposed. And they found out that I had all of this stolen merchandise, but they told me they wouldn't tell my parents. I was about 13 years old, 14 years old when this happened.
Oh my gosh.
So that was one of my really first times. But then before going to Vietnam, a lot of my close friends were doing heroin and smoking pot, and I started smoking pot at 17, and I started selling marijuana at the age of 17. So I've been a pot smoker ever since.
with that, with the, and I suppose that's like little nickel and dime sales, right? So it's little sales to your friends and stuff like that. So it's not like you're on the major radar, are you? Do you end up getting popped before you go to NOM for any of that?
No, I was, everything took place as far as getting busted for drugs was after Vietnam. I was just a small time selling ounces and pounds every so often. And it wasn't until after Vietnam that I was fortunate enough, I guess, to meet someone who was a smuggler who needed my expertise, and we became partners in smuggling marijuana from Jamaica.
Okay, and we'll get to that here in a bit. So I want to get to the point where you start working on the New York Stock Exchange. And when does this happen? At what age do you start to work at the New York Stock Exchange? Because I find that fascinating as well.
Well, when I got out of high school and got into college, I was smoking marijuana, and I started selling ounces, like I said, while I was going to school and working on the New York Stock Exchange. And I had a lot of the brokers that right before the 10 o'clock bell would be buying ounces of marijuana from me. I had the owner of one of the Ford Motor Company people. I had a lot of prestigious clientele. I don't want to use their names.
Sure.
But it was, I had my own little booth right before the opening of the bell. And so once I got to Vietnam, the opportunity after getting wounded was just an opportunity that I saw being a pothead and having all these influential people and pot being a big thing, especially when I came back from Woodstock. You know, it's been a long journey, but something that if it wasn't for that, I would not have had the faith to meet up with Arthur Hoyos when I was in prison. But getting into, prior to New York, I was back in 1976. I was had a big case in New York City.
Okay, and we'll get to that. We're going to build a little slow here. So I want to talk again. I want to get a little bit into your 18 months in Vietnam. So you served with the swamp rats there in Vietnam, and you were in a firefight. It lasted about 3 days there, and in that you were disabled, and you suffered 40% disability during that. What kind of injuries did you suffer in that firefight?
Well, what happened was we were in a firefight that took place at around 6 o'clock at night. We started smelling marijuana coming from the bushes, and right about 6 o'clock, we heard, and our defense system with all of the mines and everything started going off, and we started hearing die, G.I. die, die, G.I. die. And they started coming up, and one of my friends, John, he came out of the foxhole. We had 3 people in the foxhole. He came out and was on the top of the foxhole fighting and shooting his weapon. I was underneath with my other friend, Philip, and John said, I need some help up here. I need some help up here. So Philip came out on the right-hand side, and I started coming out on the left-hand side when they threw in a concussion grenade. And I was like 3/4 out of the foxhole when the concussion grenade went off. which blew me out of the rest of the whole. I thought my whole back was burned. The heat was just like unbearable. So I woke up in the maxillofacial ward, and I was the only one that was able to talk and didn't have a nasal. Everybody else was talking through their trachea.
Oh my God.
And half my face was in bandages. And they said that you're lucky that, you'll be able to heal. And I stayed there for 30 days. And then they sent me down to Saigon. They had a special unit that was being formed that only infantrymen could apply for the position. And you had to have like 6 months left in your service. So I went down there and I was riding around in an MP Jeep with an M60 machine gun on the front hood, riding around and making sure that there was no soldiers in the bar or civilians on the streets after 10 o'clock at night. So and I had total authority over generals or over anybody when you're affiliated with the MP.
Really?
So I never smoked cigarettes, and I met up with the Papa and I had him exchange my cigarettes for his marijuana, and I was able to get pre-rolled cigarettes in a regular pack of Mila was the name of the brand. Looked just like a regular pack of cigarettes. And I sent 10 packs, 20 in a pack, back to my friends back in the States for $200.
Really?
And then they would send me $200 bills or 50s, but only 50s or 100s. And then I would exchange it in the black market in Saigon, and I would get $400.
Whoa.
So after they made me wounded, I had 3 months left on my 6 months to get my early zeros. And I was fortunate enough to put together $26,500. And that was the start of my illustrious smuggling career.
So,
and
Ronnie, to give people an idea of how much $26,500 is, and there's some younger listeners in the audience, $26,500 could buy you what in those days?
Wow. It bought me a Ford van, that I was able to take down into Mexico that I bought for $3,000.
Jeez.
So, those Volkswagen campers back in 1971, they were really dirt cheap. No, it was quite a bit of money, but, it was something that I felt that it was a nice reward after what I just went through.
Wow.
So I felt that whatever money I could make from putting my life on the line for this country, I was well deserved.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So, I went back to my firm in Wall Street and was working there for 6 months. And while I was away, I lost my seniority to get a seat on the New York Stock Exchange. Before I left, I was like sixth in line, and we were using another company to do our clearing. Okay. When I came back, they hired another clearing company, and I became like 10th or 11th in the line of seniority for a seat.
Really?
So I felt very slighted, and I just said, this is not right. And I bought the Volkswagen camper, went down, flew to California, drove there, and started going into Mexico. and buying leather and suede goods and selling them to the boutiques that were really big at the time back in the early 70s.
Wow.
And one of my trips coming back, I had the wrong receipts, and they confiscated and put me in the Tijuana jail for 7 days. And I spent 7 days in the Tijuana jail. My first night in there, this guy, Jose, came over to me and asked me what I'm in here for, and I told him smuggling cotton. I had the yellow, I should have had the yellow copy. I had the pink copy, you know. So,
right.
So then he said, "Hey, Carlos, Lade." And the guard comes over to the cell. He goes, "Pistola." And I said, "Oh my God." I thought, here's another story of an American dying in a Mexican jail.
Right.
And next thing I know, he tells the guard to walk away. He says, "Listen, I put myself away every 6 months just so I could operate here in Tijuana. He says, you come and look me up and I'll take good care of you. And don't worry about it. And tonight I'm going to have Carmelina come in and see you." He told the officer when he came back, gave him back his gun. He said, "Tonight, Carmelina." At about 12 o'clock that night, 3 girls came into the cell, and I had my going away party. And
wow.
That was like truly amazing. And I got out like I think 2 days later and went back home, and my parents asked me where I was. I was gone for 7 days. No one knew or communicated with me. And, you know, so anyway, that was the start basically, because I came back 2 months later and I started smuggling marijuana for him in an El Camino. They had me with a sombrero in an El Camino that had a false bottom that held 50 kilos of Acapulco gold. And I would drive up and go into this diner. I meet the people in the diner, give them the keys to their car. They take it, come back. I drive back into Tijuana, and I get $500 a trip.
Really?
And some days I would make 2 trips. Some days it's just 1 trip. But after about two months of doing that, I made a nice little piece of change, and he fronted me 250 pounds of marijuana that I took to New York with me.
So now I have to ask you this, Ronnie. Let me stop you right here. So you're making these trips across the border. Now, keep in mind, I know it's not the same border strict, I shouldn't say strict border that it is today, but you had to have been running into some resistance at the border. What type of border resistance were you seeing at the time that you're running between Mexico and New York?
Nothing, believe it or not. It was so smooth. I had like groceries in the back of the El Camino. You know what I mean? Yeah, they would, you know, the El Camino had the open back, so they would put groceries and vegetables and stuff on the back of in the El Camino, and I had my sombrero, and I didn't speak Spanish, but I was able to not have any problems just going over the border.
See, nowadays you try to bring an orange across the border from Mexico, and they go nuts. You can't bring produce across the border from Mexico. But you were bringing groceries across from Mexico? There was
vegetables, and there was sometimes we had furniture, used furniture that was in the back of it. We never seemed to have a problem.
Really?
I was very fortunate, you know, but
wow.
This was after that period of time, got back into New York, and I was going down into the nightclub scene and everything like that. And I went to this club called the Penta nightclub, which was really big in Manhattan. And I was playing pool in the back, and this guy came up, and he was waiting and playing pool. And he said, "Do you want to play for something?" I said, What do you want to play for?" He said, "How about $20?" So we played for $20, and I beat him. And he said, "I want to talk to you." And he said, "Anybody, who can beat me in pool, I got to really, respect them." And my father was a hustler. I had a pool table ever since I was 10 years old. Mm-hmm. And he said, "So what do you do?" I said, "I'm a pot dealer." And he said, "Really?" And he said, "Listen, I got some suitcases in the airport down in Miami. You want to go down there and pick them up, and I'll tell you how much it's going to cost you per pound." And I said, "You serious?" He said, "Yeah, I'm serious." And he gives me 2 sets of keys. I held it for like 3 days because I couldn't believe what was, what he was telling me. Is this a setup? You know what I mean? I was like petrified. And then he calls me up 3 days later, says, "Everything okay? You got everything?" I said, "No, were you really serious?" He says, "Yeah, man, it's in the lockers." So I went down there, and I went down to the lockers. I checked into the Gateway Motel, and there was a pimp there that had 2 girls. And I said, "Listen, man, I'll give you $100 if these girls come with me to the airport." And he says, "Really?" And I said, "Yeah." I said, "Okay." So they came with me. I gave them the keys, and they went to the locker, and sure enough, there were 2 briefcases, a total of 187 pounds.
187 pounds?
In pounds, that's how much it was in there. It was in two big bags in one of these big lockers in the airport. So I came back to the motel, and the guy he couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. And then he helped me rent a car, and I drove up with one of the girls up to New York with the 187 pounds in there, and gave it to the guy, and he gave me like 10 grand, and he says, "You're going to be my partner. From now on, you're going to be working with me." And that's how I got into smuggling into Jamaica. And,
okay, so before we go to break here, Ronnie, I gotta ask you, you're holding on to that much as far as drugs go. Are your nerves off the chart, or do you maintain a steady amount of calm at some point as you're making this drive? Does it at some point, do you level off and just go, if I get caught, I get caught? Or do you just treat it like cargo? Like, I got a bunch of fruit in the back. I mean, at some point, do you disconnect from what it is you're doing?
No, to be honest with you, I have like a very strong willpower and, a strong, what they say, like my mind, when I set my mind to do something. Mm-hmm. And when I came out of Vietnam and I got into that first situation, I told myself I'm going to stay in the business until I take my first conviction, because I feel that my first conviction would be a slap on the wrist.
Okay.
And that was the premise that I'm setting myself in. Unbeknown to me, because of my perfectionism, I was able to elude the police for 9.5 years.
Wow.
So it got to the point where, like, yes, I just figured I started out small as cleaning dishes in restaurants, and then a bartender, and then a food and beverage director, and then, so it was just, I kept graduating as I never had any bumps in the road or anything until that took place in New York in 1976. That's right now I'm the leading case in New York. If you pick up a law book in New York, you'll see Berkowitz versus the United States, New York State, and under fast and speedy trial, they're citing my case, where at least I know when I leave this world, there are people that are using my case to get their innocence. So it's the judge who made thrown out the case, but knew that they violated every one of my civil rights, and if he threw out the case, there'll be no record of it. And he couldn't believe that the jury would find me guilty. Wow. When they found me guilty, and he had to sentence me, he sentenced me 2 to 6 years. I was facing 45 years, and he gave me bail pending appeal. Okay. And I had to go to Rikers Island.
Okay, well, we'll get to that down the line here. Let's take a pause right here. When we come back, I want to get into exactly where we turn the corner from drugs into what you eventually get into, which is credit card fraud. There's a second chapter to your story here, and I want to see how we get down that line, because that's a huge step. And there's more to Ronnie's story. Ronnie has and he does end up getting involved with this drug kingpin, and we'll talk about Arturo and Arturo's story as well. And when we come back, we've got much more to the story here, folks. Our guest is Ronnie Baker. The name of the book is The Plastic Magician. It's available right now. We have a link in the description of this program. When we come back, we'll talk about Arturo and how Arturo shapes Ronnie's comeuppance as a drug smuggler. We've talked a little bit about him getting more and more into the business and larger scales. We'll talk a little bit about smuggling marijuana and eventually cocaine from Jamaica and Colombia. We'll talk about how it gets on a bigger and bigger scale here. And we'll get, again, as Ronnie mentioned, into his eventual prosecution. That coming up next on the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. Welcome back to the best in true crime podcasting. This is True Crime Tuesday. I'm your host, Tim Dennis. Our guest is Ronnie Baker. The name of the book is The Plastic Magician. We have a link to it in the description of this program. So, Ronnie, before we left for the break, we were talking about the fact that you've now escalated in the game a little bit. You've now gone from smuggling just marijuana, or basically coming up with bigger and bigger bits of marijuana and smuggling it from Mexico. And now you're getting big time. Now you're making that run, and you're starting to make the move into Jamaica. You're starting to carry not just the weight of marijuana, but now you're starting to get into cocaine, and now you're making moves into Jamaica. And this drug kingpin has now said, you now work for me. So now you're talking about bigger and bigger stakes. And I'm curious as to, you say to yourself, okay, well, I'm gonna make this big jump. And you had even mentioned 9.5 years, and you're taking more and more precautions, but at the same time, you're more and more thorough. Do you ever say to yourself at this point, okay, there's going to be a point I know I'm going to slip up, but where's it going to be? Do you consciously say to yourself, I know I have to cover my tracks?
Well, no, really, it all stems, like I said, it all comes from I'm going to be and do what I have to do in the drug business until I take my first conviction. And as long as I feel that I'm not hurting anybody along the way as far as physically, that unless I really had to, but at least I felt that was the parameter that I set for myself. I didn't know that that would take that long, but the more I got into it and the more money I made, it just got to the point where there were a lot of people depending on me to make money. And that seemed to be the hardest part of me drawing myself away from the business, was the many people that I had in certain positions that would give me the opportunity to perform at a level where I thought I was one step ahead of them. So
now, you also managed to, at the same time that you're smuggling large amounts of weight, you're also managing to keep a normal day job. And you're working at a rib joint? You're managing a rib joint at this point, right?
Yeah, Bobby Rubino's place for ribs. I was the manager there. And I was able, because we had a plane, we had a Baron, Twin Beach Baron, I was able to fly in all of my situations. I would never have to be away for more than 2 or 3 days. I had people and things in place where I didn't have to be, away for more than a certain period of time. So it was because my parents, may they rest in peace now, have always told me that if we ever catch you and if you're ever in jail, don't bother calling us. I wasn't talking to my mother, may she rest in peace, because I wanted to buy my first boat, and my father went down to see the boat with me. It was confiscated by the DEA, and I was in an auction that I signed up for, and I was able to pick up this boat that was really an incredible steal for like $35,000, and it was like an over $85,000 boat, and all I needed was a co-signer. And my mother told my father, if you do anything with this boat, he's going to put marijuana on it, and I don't want you to be a co-signer. So, unfortunately, the last 2 years of her life, because of her being detective and doing that, I didn't talk to her. And it hurts me today, but I feel some kind of recognition that she'd be rolling over in her grave to know that marijuana is legal in so many states, so to speak, and that we wouldn't have these fights had she still be living now. So it's one of those things. She was a detective. My father was the enforcer, but my mother was the detective.
I find that interesting too. There's as you put it, there's so many states out there now where not only is marijuana legal. I mean, it's been legal for medicinal purposes in quite a few states, but now it's being legal for recreational purposes. It's been decriminalized in quite a few states, and now President Biden is talking about decriminalizing it in all 50 states. I wonder when you talk to when you talk about like your parents and you talk about older Americans, senior citizens, I wonder what the attitude would be amongst them right now. I wonder about my grandparents who have passed now, what they would even think about it, because amongst them, amongst the reefer madness crowd, it would I got to think it would be absolutely taboo.
Right, and believe it or not, my mother said to me, she said, listen, I smoked marijuana when I was 17, but it's not legal. So I said, that's why you drink alcohol? She goes, yeah, because if marijuana was legal, I would be smoking that instead of drinking alcohol.
Yeah.
And that was, I think my mother was like something like 35, 38 when she found some pills that I had, and she was on a mescaline trip for 3 days. And I thought we would become very close after that, but she was just very into making sure that I wasn't addicted or whatever, that I was still able to perform and, have work, credible work. That was one of my major motivations, was not to let my parents down and not to be somebody that's going to be, that they couldn't be proud of. So
you bring up something very interesting, and that is, Ice-T used to say in his lyrics, "Never get high on your own supply." Right? Did you ever partake during the times that you were dealing?
Yes, I felt when I got indicted and I was waiting for 2 years, I was using a lot more than what I would do, but I would never get to the point. At one point, I would have a friend hold a kilo in his house, and I said, "I don't care what time I come over here, what I say, what I do, you don't give me anything, okay?" Mm-hmm. But I was always good that way. I lived by that adage, and if I used up more than I thought I would use up, and I would never go into, I always wanted to be at least 50% above board.
Yeah.
This way I felt I could break even and tomorrow will be a better day. And that's the way I did my business. I grew my business by fronting the marijuana to people and saying, "You got 30 days to have it. I don't care what you do within 30 days. The end of 30 days, I want my money."
Yep.
And that's the way I did it. And I only gave them half of what I could afford to lose. And that's the way I built it. And then once they made the money the first couple of times, then when I asked them for money, I wouldn't have to fund it for them anymore because I knew they had the money. So, but that's how I grew my operation, and the friends, and most of the friends were people that I either met in the service or were service connected, because I felt the camaraderie and that tradition of being a team and working together. I felt that it would be harmonious, and I really wouldn't worry about, being turned in by one-on-one. Even though I had a small, I only had like 3 or 4 people that were really in on the smuggling operation.
Right.
The other people were just renting stash houses, mm-hmm. was just driving marijuana and rented cars up from Florida to New York or to Philadelphia. Other than that, those were things where I always had an attorney that was being paid for in advance, and there was always at least $80,000 in an escrow account. In the event that they would get busted, they would know that they would have money, and they would know and speak to the attorney to know what the 2 to 3 years would be for X amount of pot caught in the car. So I covered there was no price for bad security. That's the way I've always presented myself. And, so as long as there was a gray area, I have 2 attorneys in my family, and my mother always wanted me to be an attorney. She told me I have a little professor that, you may be able to fool the judges, but you can't fool me. And she was right, so that's why it took them so long to get me. And like I said, my case in New York I was marked for trial for 2 years. And every time I would fly up from Florida, it would be postponed because they couldn't find the witness. And I had 6 judges say that if the witness was not produced before trial, there should be no trial. And then the 7th judge knew my attorney and said, "Listen, I don't want to throw this out because this is just unbelievable, what they did to him." And He said, don't worry, the jury's not going to find him guilty. I didn't even take the witness stand. And like I said, I went to Rikers Island. I was in Rikers Island for 3 days. When my bail was put up within 24 hours, because Rikers Island said they'd never seen a conviction for conspiracy for cocaine with bail pending appeal.
Wow. Wow.
You know, so I've had a lot of incredible situations that, have taken place.
So you got 23 years for your role as a drug ringleader in trafficking on the East Coast. And then the sentence came after being held without bond by federal judge Norman Retger, right?
Yeah, he was a German, and he believed if you were Italian and if you were Jewish, you shouldn't have escaped the Holocaust.
Really?
He was the most overturned federal judge that they've ever had. He handled a case called the Fedorenko case, where Fedorenko was charged with war crimes for the Jewish people. And they had Jewish people come in from Auschwitz and everything and say this was the guy that did it and everything. And he found the guy not guilty. Said to them, it's been so long ago, how do you know it was him? So anyway, they overturned his decision within less than a month after he made it and put the guy up for war crimes.
Wow.
And his daughter died of an overdose from a drug dealer. So he felt, and my co-defendant was Italian, and he had ties with organized crime. So he felt that he wanted to make sure. He said his words; these were his exact words. There are better ways to make a grub stake in the United States than selling drugs. And since you haven't learned your lesson, I'm going to give you enough time for you to learn that lesson. Those were his exact words.
So he had a bit of a grudge.
Yeah.
So you then went to FCI Tallahassee in May of 1980. And when you're there, you befriend a man by the name of Arthur Hoyos in the summer of 83. And Arthur was sentenced to 8 years for credit card fraud. Now, he had ripped off American Express for over $8 million at this point. And you start to learn a little something from Arthur while you're there. Explain to us how you developed this relationship with Arthur and what it is exactly you learned from him.
Well, when I first met Arturo, it was in the office, the law library, and he was talking in like 3 or 4 different languages to people and acting like a negotiator. And I noticed the watch that he had on was a Califate, and I'm saying, wow, that's at least a $10,000 watch, and I went over to him and we just started talking, and I told him what I was in here for, and he told me, I was on the front pages of the Miami Herald in 1983 for credit card fraud for ripping off American Express for $8 million. And I said, oh my God. And he said, yeah, they gave me 8 years, and I said, wow. And that just started it off. And then while we were on the compound, since I was smuggling marijuana into Tallahassee, I always had marijuana. So we would get high on the rec field, and it turns out that in 1983, the federal issued all federal prisons to piss test their inmates. 10% of the inmates should be piss tested.
Okay.
Well, when I started my sentence, there was in Tallahassee, there was nobody that had more time than me. And I figured this was going to go for a while. And so what happened was I got to the point where I found somebody who was able who had a gate pass, who was able to bring in stuff from the outside through the gate, and we worked out something. And at one time, I had a fire extinguisher next, about 3 beds down from my dormitory, that had like 32 ounces of marijuana in it. And what they call keisters, it's a balloon with a half ounce that people, they use that to bring it in through their rectum. So Arthur and I became really close, and then when we got piss tested, it turns out that we were we were part of the 80 people out of the 475 inmates. 80 people came back with dirty urine. That means that every one of those 80 people had to do 30 days in solitary.
Oh.
So what happens was they didn't have enough cells to do all of that at one time, so they derived a set of cells in the cell house, and we called it piss test row. And it was 9 cells that would hold like supposed to be 9 individuals, but because there were so many, they put 2 in a cell. And it just so happens, and it was fate, that Arturo and I wound up in the same cell. And while I was there, we were both still going to the law library. Mm-hmm. He was telling me his story of his life, how he got here and what they did to his parents. And, it was just such an incredible story. I couldn't believe it. I just was taking notes at night, going and typing it up in the law library the next day, listening to his story, and I just was like overwhelmed. I mean, I've heard of and spoken to many criminals that had minds that you wouldn't believe, and this guy overshadowed all of them. He made them look like Mickey Mouse compared to the crimes that he pulled off. It was just like, so what happens was when I said I really didn't want to believe him. I thought that this is, and then when he asked the officer to go into his personal belongings, the officer came back with the original paper of the Miami Herald that had his picture on the front page saying, "Credit card fees rip off American Express for over $8 million. And it was at that point that I truly believed he was who he was. And it's funny because when I was during my years of doing my scams, I had a company called I worked with Liberty Mutual, Liberty Travel, okay. Mother Goose Fantasies. We make fantasy reality. That was the name of the company, Mother Goose. We make fantasy reality. Okay. I had a girl working in Liberty Travel that was able to give me the code numbers on prepaid tickets. Okay. So I had an OG, which was the manual for booking flights and everything. I had her give me their code, and I would be able to go to a phone booth, and I would be able to call in a prepaid ticket for you, first class, wherever you wanted. Wow. And my biggest thing was I sent like 8 people down to Puerto Rico to San Jose, my biggest thing was Muhammad Ali when he was facing down in New Orleans. I chartered 9 people down there, like $600 round trip, first class. I mean, so I was always into scams, and then one of them was with credit cards. When credit cards first came about, the banks were just sending you a credit card in the mail.
Mm-hmm.
You didn't even know you were getting one, and then you get a letter saying, we just sent you a credit card. Please give us a call back and let us know that you received it.
Yep.
So I had a friend. I was working during Christmas time as a worker in the post office. So he was getting me these credit cards. I was giving him $100 for every credit card, and you didn't even know you were getting it yet. Then I went to the Motor Vehicle Bureau, and I spoke to somebody there, and I was able to give them $150 for them to give me a driver's license with that name that I got from the credit card, since the folder that I got had all of the information about the person. Dealing with a credit card that had who knew how much the limit was, because I wasn't getting the original limit. I was just getting the credit card.
Right.
So, and then back then at the restaurants, they had a newspaper that would come out that every 2 weeks you would see which credit cards were no good and which one weren't. Mm-hmm. And the thing for the credit cards was anything over $125, they would only check the book. They wouldn't call up to see if the card was good or bad. So I was eating in restaurants like for free for God knows how many months. I mean, it was not a large scale. It was really petty when you look at the scheme of things. I had one guy that was putting together an office for Xerox in California, and his company was paying him to fly out there twice a week. Mm-hmm. So I was giving him round-trip tickets for $400 first class, and he was getting like $600 and $700 from the company. So it was all petty stuff, but it was, then I had my other scam with the airlines. I would always buy extra baggage insurance, and then I would take the bags off of the carousel and report my bags being stolen, and I would get, $500 per bag. And within the course of the year, I pick up an extra $1,500, $2,000. So I had my little scams here and there, And so when he was telling me about his scams, I'm looking at myself and I'm saying, oh my God, this guy dressed up as an Argentinian general. It was the time when the Falkland Island situation took place with Britain. Yep. So what he does is he gets a letterhead from the Argentinian government, and he writes a letter saying that they want to buy armament for their conflict with the Falkland Islands, and we're sending over General Martinez to open up an account so we could purchase weaponry for our conflict. So he sends that letter to the bank. When he gets there, he's dressed up as an Argentinian general. The head guy meets him, offers him a Cuban cigar, and they just start smoking and having a good time. He puts in $1.1 million of his own money into the account. And then 2 days later, he puts a bank check in, a letter of credit, for $3 million. And then like a day later, he starts drawing out the money little by little. He wound up drawing out $1.7 million from the $3 million that he put in as
oh my God.
So, yeah, I mean, there were like 4 or 5 other ones that, like I said, I just couldn't put it all into the book, you know what I mean? But things like that were just like unbelievable.
So
and
Arturo was a big time roller. I mean, he didn't go for nickel and dime scams. He was swinging for the fences.
When it took me, after I wrote the book 37 years ago, it wasn't until about 8 years ago that I was able to have a friend of mine locate all of his testimony in front of the Senate subcommittee.
Okay.
And that's part of the book. And in his testimony in front of, because when I was doing time with me, he got a letter from the Vice President Bush to come and testify in front of the judicial system to help them stopping for credit card fraud, computer crimes. They wanted his expertise because he was known as the main man. That they knew that he was getting $100,000 just to talk to him, to tell him their scam, to see if it was good, bad, or indifferent. Wow. And could he make any improvements? So this is all documented when he was talking and what they knew about in the Senate subcommittee. And so Arthur was just playing the role of, telling them that he wanted to change his life over and become a specialist in protecting and helping banks and companies against credit card fraud, when that was the furthest thing from the truth. He just wanted to document his legacy, so by talking to them. And when he told them that, they said, well, listen, it says here that you were making $248 million every 8 days. And he goes, yeah, that's what they say. Okay. Every 8 days, he was making $248 million.
What?
Okay. And they said, did you ever pay taxes for that? He goes, no. He goes, why? Because I can't afford it.
I can't afford it.
That's how I ended it at the end of my book. That's how I ended it. That he had the audacity to tell them yes.
That's brilliant. That is absolutely brilliant. Well, I think that's probably a great place for us to end it too, Ronnie. I tell you what, let's have people go out and get the book, The Plastic Magician, which not only
excuse me, it wasn't 248 million. It was 248,000 every 8 days.
Oh, okay, 248,000 every 8 days. But still, that's a lot of money, Ronnie. I mean, come on.
Especially all cash.
Oh my gosh!
And and what happened was, it was one of his employees. They didn't know how to get to him, so they were following his attorney that they felt that they had when he was in Morocco, and his attorney led them to one of his workers who was drawing money out of one of the accounts, and so the attorney and one of his workers, they told him, give me $50,000 and we won't turn you in.
Oh my gosh.
So he said, okay, not a problem. And he paid the attorney, and his friend, his friend was able to drop out of the case. And then 3 months later, he got indicted because his attorney went ahead and still testified against him.
Oh, that's rotten. That's rotten.
So it wasn't like they got him, you know what I mean? He was always one step ahead of them, you know?
Yeah, that's terrible. I mean, there's no honor. There's no honor among thieves, of course. But
right.
But there's even less honor among attorneys, I guess, is the lesson there. The name of the book is The Plastic Magician. We have a link to it in the description of this program. We encourage you guys to go out and get that. Ronnie Baker is our guest, and Ronnie, I want to thank you so much for giving us the time today. It's greatly appreciated.
Thank you, Tim. I really thank you for this opportunity. And I believe anyone who reads my book, they won't be able to put it down. If you like the movie Catch Me If You Can, it makes that look like kindergarten. That's how the scams of this Arthur Hoyos was.
There you go.
Thank you.
There you go. It's time for us to lighten stuff up, folks. And it's time now for Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals.
It's Crayon News story time.
What happened with this dude, Christ Bearer? I heard he cut his penis off and then jumped off a balcony.
Suspect pulls gun from butt, shoots twice at Denver police.
What is your emergency?
I need help.
And what's the problem?
I'm too high.
You're too high?
Yeah.
It's that time you've all been looking forward to. It's Dumb Crimes and Stupid Criminals. Unfortunately, Mally and Jess are not available this week, but I do have a special co-host this week. I bring in a fellow brother, one that has his own show, as a matter of fact, and we'll have him tell us about it here in just a moment. We bring in a former guest of Darkness Radio. We bring in Travis Thorpe. How you doing, brother?
Doing well, Tim. How are you doing?
Very good. Very good. Tell people about your own show before we launch into Dumb Crimes, Stupid Criminals.
Sure. Well, our show is known as the ACTJ, which is an acronym for the American Council for Truth in Journalism.
Wow. Look at that.
This show is, I would say, had its origins in a lot of like satire, comedy, a lot of, just friends getting together and being uncouth and very unfiltered, very inappropriate for not adult audiences.
Okay.
But we started to merge into a different realm of actually following more trends of news and world happenings. Mm-hmm. And I think what makes our show really cool is that we have this council of people that all come from different walks of life, different political backgrounds, different backgrounds in professions, everything from your local drug dealer to your local cop, all coming together on a council, debating topics in life and showing that you can still be friends at the end.
Yeah.
We don't need to hate each other.
Right. Exactly. You don't have to. Right. Well, I guess that's kind of appropriate. We just had a drug dealer on the show. So there you go. Yeah. And credit card fraud specialist. So, and we got along just fine. We had a great time. I learned how to move keys from Jamaica to Florida to wherever you want to and not get caught. But of course it was in the 70s and 80s, so it doesn't help me now. But
yeah, technology's evolved a little bit.
Well, a little bit. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't help you now. That's for sure. I mean, but what do you do? Not like I was going to do it. I mean, come on, people.
They don't make enough floaties for that many keys anymore.
That's right. That's right. Speaking of, our first story today has to do with a whole lot of somebody was trying to move bricks in the Florida Keys because they found over 60 pounds of cocaine bricks, $1 million worth floating in the ocean off the Florida Keys.
That's insane. So you remember that movie, what was it, Cocaine Bear?
Yes, yeah.
It's almost like they were looking for another episode of Sharknado, but, merging with the Cocaine Bear.
Yeah.
They're running out of ideas in Hollywood, I think.
I got to show you this, Trav. Look at this. This was the symbol. I'm going to show you this on camera. This was the symbol that was on the front of each brick. There's a good old American eagle right there.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's in case the DEA stops them and they're like, no, let this through. That's a good old American eagle right there.
I would assume it's more so iconography for those that are transporting it.
Yeah.
Like, hey, you may have graduated third grade, but here, this stamp right here, this was for America.
America.
Right? America.
American Coke. That's what this is. Boaters have discovered $1 million worth of cocaine floating at sea off the Florida Keys. Now, authorities said 65 pounds of cocaine were found in individually wrapped packages. That's convenient. On Saturday, each emblazoned with an image of a bald eagle. Samuel Briggs II, he's not the first, he's the second, the acting chief patrol agent of the U.S. Border Patrol, said the drugs were seized by authorities. Recreational boater in the Florida Keys discovers 65 pounds of cocaine floating at sea. Evidently had too much energy after he found it. He just was, woohoo! I'm just saying maybe he dipped into the supply.
I mean, how else would he, know it was cocaine? Unless he opened it, and I'm just going to say maybe there was 65 beforehand.
Yeah. Look, Ma, powdered sugar. No. The Monroe County Sheriff's Office said the boaters found the packages about 7 miles off Isla Mirada, Florida. The suspected drugs were turned over to the U.S. Border Patrol. Reluctantly, the office didn't say that. I said that, probably reluctantly. Earlier this month, scuba divers swimming off the Florida Keys found 25 kilos of cocaine valued at over $1 million. The divers said they initially thought the bags were trash. No, some men's trash are another men's treasure. That's for sure.
Well, and that just speaks to our economy right now, too, because, I mean, if you had 64 kilos of cocaine floating, I would assume by the time it made American shores, it would be worth a lot more than just $1 million.
Yeah.
Do better.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Yeah. Well, with inflation these days, that's got to be at least 3 million, right? I'm just saying the 25 packages were found about 100 feet underwater, according to authorities. 100 feet. By the way, those packages were marked with fake Nike logos. So they're getting a little, inventive with what they're putting on the front of Coke. By the way, do you put the Nike logos on there because you want people to just do it? Just asking. That was a pretty clever quip there, Tim. I gotta, that disarmed me. I'm sorry. Just wondering. By the way, earlier this month, a joint operation of the U.S. Coast Guard and the Royal Netherlands Navy discovered 4,800 pounds of cocaine worth more than $63 million from a vessel at a Florida port. There's a lot of coke being run into this country. What's the deal?
Well, Pepsi isn't popular anymore.
See, I give you one of those. That's wow. Pepsi's running a distinct number 2. It's more J-Lo ads, I think, is what they need.
I made a promise to myself and a bunch of my old infantry companions from the Army a few years back to never make fun of the Coast Guard anymore. We used to call them puddle pirates and, the stepchild of the armed services, whatever. Yeah. But I came across this YouTube video a couple years back where this operator of a guy jumps off of his boat onto a moving submarine in the middle of the ocean, and armed with a pistol, and comes up to the door and just pounding on it, yelling commands, and stops a submarine moving at like 30 knots. And I was like, the balls on this guy. I can't make fun of the Coast Guard for at least 5 years, right? Like, so they got to pass for 5 years. You're not going to get any anti-Coast Guard hate from me tonight.
What did he think he was, Indiana Jones? What was he doing?
That guy was operating at a level of like Delta Force. Like, this guy was insane. You should find the YouTube video of it sometime. Coast Guard stops submarine. You see this guy jump off, moving, and clears like a 6-foot jump from his moving vessel on top of a moving submarine on the surface of the water. It's insane.
Jeez, that is something. Let's move on to our next story. 2 seniors are swindled out of $400,000 in gold. I love gold. $400,000. In an audacious and heartbreaking scheme, a pair of elderly Floridians were swindled out of $400,000 in gold bars by a phone fraudster who who claimed that the victims were facing arrest due to illegal activity in their respective Amazon accounts. That, according to court records, last month, a 78-year-old Jensen Beach resident called police to report that he had been bilked out of $154,000 after receiving a call from a man claiming to be an Amazon representative. Here's a hint, folks. Amazon doesn't call you for anything.
Ever. Nor does the IRS.
Neither does the IRS, no.
Nor does any of these guys that keep shysting people out of their money.
That's right.
You know, it's insane.
Yeah. After being told about purported fraud on his account, the victim was transferred to a Brian Alba, who said he was an agent with the U.S. government and that based on the activity, there was several warrants out for his arrest. Strike number 2. That doesn't ever happen either. Alba said he could keep the man out of jail, but the victim would first have to obtain a $154,000 cashier's check, strike number 3, and then use the funds to purchase 2 gold bars. There's another strike. Wow, you've struck out many, many times here, each of which weighed a kilo and cost in excess of $75,000, by the way. Alba assured the septuagenarian that he would send him a cashier's check after he received the gold. Oh, God. For the amount that he paid for it. Do you see a lot of big strikes here, Trav? I mean, just...
I do. I'm a little flabbergasted, too. But I just got to say, you know, the biggest red flag for them should have been the shipping location for this being Lagos, Nigeria. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
You know, it's insane how people fall for this, but they do every day.
You ever want to see some really terrible scams and schemes? Watch Dr. Phil on any weekday. And these women who say, I'm in love with him. He lives in Nigeria and he FaceTimes me every day. And I'm going to move my kids there. I mean, stuff like that is just like the oddest stuff in the world.
He's a crane operator and he makes over 6 figures a year, but he just needs the $300 now so that he can get his equipment running so that he can keep making money. And he'll give it to me eventually because he loves me.
Yeah, I sold the house.
I got a bridge to sell you too.
I sold the house and I gave him all my escrow. Oh, God, no, you didn't. Now,
I hope I never get like that.
Oh, no. But if I do, send me to an asylum, please, if they still have them. Scams like this frequently target the elderly, who sometimes can be addled, fearful, and easy to manipulate, especially if they do not have a relative or friend with whom to discuss strange telephone contacts. I would think that's strange enough. I mean, I can't imagine being that lonely.
You know, and it makes me reflect a little bit, too, because, you know, a lot of the younger generation has been, you know, opining about how a lot of our politicians are just too old. Right. Mm-hmm. And if a lot of the elderly population is so easily fooled into selling off their escrow and assets into foreign nations, should we be having them in the reins of power, too?
Yeah. Well, we need some younger politicians. I'll give you that. After obtaining the gold, by the way, the victim put the bars in an old iPhone box, probably not the most secure way to do it, and wrapped the package to make it look like a gift. It is a big gift. I kind of like that under my tree. Yeah, at Christmas time. Yeah. With Alba on the phone directing him, the man drove on May 24th to a drop-off location and placed the package in the backseat of a sedan with the driver, or when the driver rolled down the window. The elderly man only called police when he continued to get calls from Alba, that's in quotes, seeking more gold. Evidently, the 2 bars weren't enough, Travis.
No. Well, I mean, look, investments in gold and silver are up. Just make sure that you call 1-800 Tim Dennis today.
Yes, 1-800 Tim Dennis today. I'll answer the phone, or I'll gladly take your gold bars if you want to give them to me.
Tim, go ahead and make sure you put your Cash App at the bottom of the screen now for everybody that would like to go ahead and contribute.
I will, yes. The victim, cops say, began to feel like the entire thing was a scam. At what point? That's what I want to know.
Did they feel it after they sent it in Christmas wrapping?
I would hope that would be. Maybe it was after Alba asked the 5th time for more gold bars. At the direction of investigators, the man continued to take calls from Alba, who told the retiree to go to the bank and move money from his investment account to his checking account. Oh, this is getting ridiculous. So that he could get a cashier's check to buy more gold. The victim Thursday arranged to deliver an extra $200,000 to Alba's driver, carrying a box filled with fishing weights, not gold this time. Thank God. The man was told by Alba to drive to a nearby shopping mall. There, the victim was directed to a Toyota whose driver was a male of Indian descent who was on the phone during the transaction as well. As a police surveillance team watched, the victim, as instructed, put the package in the Toyota, which drove away with the quote-unquote gold. Guess what happens next, Travis?
I am amazed, absolutely shocked that there's little to no restitution for victims in this, because almost always these culprits are from a whole other nation, and there's little that the government can do. Well,
here's where we get a little get back. Are you ready?
Oh, I'm excited.
Okay. So cops subsequently pulled the car over after he took off with the weights with the fishing lures. They pull the car over and get the man who was the driver, identified as 21-year-old Tehaskumar Patel, who carried an Illinois driver's license, and said he lived with his family in Hanover Park, which is a Chicago suburb. Patel claimed he came to the U.S. in October of 2023, and he had a green card. So he's on the up and up, supposedly.
Yeah.
After floating a series of false explanations, Patel was arrested for grand theft, a felony, and transported to police headquarters. While in custody, Patel confessed to his role in the fraud scheme, saying he had been paid by someone he knows as Rocky, not our friend Rocky Stucci.
Better not be.
It's spelled differently. Rocky is in the fighter Rocky, to pick up packages and then deliver them to drop-off points. He claimed to have worked since May with Rocky, who pays for his travel, rental cars, and hotel stays. Well, Rocky sounds like a sugar daddy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, would you not be if you were making all that gold?
I guess, right? Patel, who claimed he had only done 6 jobs for Rocky, gave cops access to his WhatsApp account. So you were dead on with the gold thing in WhatsApp, which showed he had been sent all over the country by Rocky. His phone showed that earlier Thursday he was directed to do a gold pickup from a 77-year-old Florida woman. So you're dead on with the WhatsApp and the gold scam.
Yeah.
Evidence in Patel's phone showed that he was the driver who picked up the 2 gold bars from the Jensen Beach victim in late May. Patel pointed out that all the people he picked up gold from were Americans, and that everyone he delivered the gold to were from India. Patel claimed he thought this was weird, but whenever he asked about it, Rocky told him to just focus on the job. Patel claimed he did not know the gold was obtained through fraudulent means. Right. Wink, wink.
Yeah, because that's why you go and meet in a parking lot late at night and have it just dropped off in your trunk like a drug deal. Yeah.
Right. A police examination of Patel's phone revealed that he was allegedly involved in scamming another Floridian out of cash and a large amount of gold, $242,000 worth to be exact. That swindle in neighboring St. Lucie County is expected to result in additional charges against Patel. Facing 3 felony counts, Patel is locked up in the Martin County Jail and made his appearance last Friday, his initial appearance in circuit court. Police investigations into the gold bar scheme are continuing. So there you go. Let's move on to our next story. This next story sent in by our listeners. By the way, if you have a story for Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals, and a lot of you do, send it in, tim@darknessradio.com. This next one is from a listener of ours. And it turns out that a New York City mobster known as Tony Cakes has been identified as a pedestrian who was decapitated by a truck in New York City.
Wow.
Yeah.
As opposed to Tony Funnel Cakes, because I remember him from high school. But Tony Cakes, this is a whole different guy. I need to know more about him.
That's right. Well, you're about to find out here, Travis. A New York City man who died last week after he was decapitated when a truck plowed into him while he was crossing a New York City street. Doesn't happen that often, but when it does, it makes news. Was identified as a former captain for the Genovese crime family. The New York Police Department told Fox News Digital the victim was identified as Antonio Canigliaro.
Say that 10 times fast.
Antonio Canigliaro. There we go. Canigliaro, who was 86 years old.
Oh.
So he led a nice long life. Went by Tony Cakes and Tony the Dessert Man. I think he had a sweet tooth. Yeah. I'm just saying. Generally, when you're named that by the mob, it tends to be either something you really like to eat, or it was a habit, or it was the way you sent people out of this world.
Yeah, probably like, hey, we're just going for a cannoli. Don't worry about it. Bye.
Yeah. I'm going to kill you with sweets. It was never, it's generally it's Jimmy the Gunman or, Tony the Knife or,
well,
hey.
You would think they'd name him, was it Relford Brimley or whatever his name is?
Yeah.
Diabetes.
I'm going to call you Tony Diabetes because I kill you with a bunch of donuts. Something like that. So, Canigliaro was known as Tony Cakes and Tony the Dessert Man, probably because he just fed you full of sugar. Was a former acting capo for the Mafia family, according to the New York Post. He died June 12th when he was struck by a city Department of Transportation truck in Brooklyn. Not exactly how most Mafia members go out.
No,
that's pretty anticlimactic.
And, well, I mean, he was taken out technically by the government.
Yes, but not by the police department or by the FBI. Not necessarily. He spent his life looking over his shoulder, but he forgot to look both ways before crossing the street, one police source said, probably snickering as he said it.
That was a great time for a rim shot right there.
One of those, yeah. Authorities said Canigliaro was crossing Dahlgren Place against a don't walk sign in a marked crosswalk when the 31-year-old driver of a Ford F550 truck, that's a little big for New York City, was turning on a green light and struck him. My guess is he was from upstate. He was pronounced dead at the scene, Canigliaro was. The driver remained at the scene. No arrest had been made at the time. Canigliaro, who for years worked in the wholesale cake business. Tony Cakes. He was a baker. Yeah. He was a baker over here. Sold sweets across the New York City area and ran an Italian ice and gelato stand in Little Italy. I can't even say it. In Little Italy. Yeah. He was accused by federal prosecutors in 2005 of being a soldier in the Genovese crime family. Canigliaro worked as a loan shark for the family, according to prosecutors. He eventually copped a guilty plea to a racketeering conspiracy charge, for which he received a 13-month sentence, according to court records. The former
I imagine how those conversations went is, hey, I told you if you ain't got my money, I'm going to make your grandma into a stage 2 diabetic.
She's going to be type 2, I guarantee you. Here's the deal. I'm going to bake her a cake so large, she's going to have all her teeth fall out.
She's going to need Ozempic.
I'm going to have Ozempic, Mounjaro, and Wegovy delivered to her house.
She's going to have neuropathy for years.
Her feet are going to hurt so bad, she's going to need corrective shoes.
I'm sure we offended a third of the population of the audience.
Hey, you've only offended me. That's all. I'm the only diabetic in this deal. The former foot soldier was arrested in 1999, by the way, for criminal usury. I didn't even know that was a charge. And in 2006, in a grand larceny case, law enforcement sources told the newspaper, Matthew Mari, who is a mob lawyer who counted Canigliaro as a friend and client told the paper that Canigliaro became successful in the dessert business after serving his prison time. So evidently he learned how to bake a cake as fast as he could in prison there, Travis.
You know, it was funny though, because you went like nursery rhyme with that. And earlier when we were talking about his exit out of this world, the first thought in my head was, do you think they sat there and went, man, like Humpty Dumpty, do you think we can put them back together again?
See? And what's funny is you use eggs in both. Huh? There you go. Later on in life, he became known as Tony the Dessert Man, according to Mari, because he was a kind, gentle, soft-spoken, and very quiet guy, always trying to help people. I could either break your legs or I could bake you a cake. It's your choice. Me.
That's a pretty sweet offer.
I prefer to make you a cake. What would you like on top of it?
Look, I can either extract your tooth with my fist, or I can give you fucking
I could give
dentures.
I could give you tooth decay. Yeah. It's up to you.
You like cavities?
Yeah. The Genovese family, by the way, is among the 5 families among New York City. The other members are the Gambinos, the Lucchese's, the Bananos, and the Colombos. Were you familiar with all 5, by the way?
Yeah, it's a lot like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You had the Raphaels, the Donatellos, the Leonardos, and the Michelangelos, you know? And I do it like a pizza.
And coincidentally, 5 families of New York and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, both led by Splinter. Bet you didn't know that.
I didn't, but I do now. The more you know.
Doom, 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 doom. Let's move on to the next story, my friend. Reno. We're going to Reno, Nevada, where police provide more details on an officer's premature gun discharge that injured 3. Sometimes you can't keep it in your pants. You got to keep it in the family.
Yeah, well, I mean, I guess he hadn't heard about a pill.
I guess. The Reno Police Department has issued a statement last Thursday with additional information as to the discharge of a plainclothes police officer's firearm at the Reno Rodeo. Because if you're going to fire off your firearm, why not do it at the rodeo, right?
Yeah.
I guess.
That's, I guess if he really wanted to rile up those bulls and he wanted to see some clown just get worked.
Working the clown. I did that last week.
Is that what they call it now?
You're working the clown. Hey, Reno police said that plainclothes officers responding to assist a Washoe County Sheriff's deputy with a domestic violence incident were unable to immediately get through to the scene due to a large crowd, and one officer jumped a fence to assist. The Reno officer's gun holster got caught in the fence as he was coming over. According to police, this dislodged his handgun, which fell to the ground and fired a single round, injuring 3 people due to debris.
Was this the same firearm that took out JFK? What kind of magic bullet is that?
Yes, it was.
Like somebody needs to call Jesse Ventura and have him do a 40-minute episode explaining how this rodeo.
I don't know. You tell me, Travis. You tell me. How did it injure 3 people, Travis? You tell me. All 3 were treated for their injuries, by the way. Reno police are working to determine if there was a malfunction with the holster or firearm, or if any practices are needed to be addressed. How, when you're jumping a fence and it accidentally snags on the fence, how do you practice that?
Yeah, well, I think for them, they're talking about like reviewing standard operating procedures. Like, should you have one in the pipe? right? and have it in condition red. Yeah. And especially if you're in an environment full of, clowns and bowls and alcohol, maybe have it in a condition amber instead, right?
Which do you shoot first, the clown, the alcoholic, or the bowl?
Or three people. Explain to them.
Maybe we could get one of those magic bullets.
I need to get some of those rounds for my mags. I'm a little feeling left out here. I mean, like I traditionally have found that 1 round per target is usually what you hit, but having magic bullets like that, I need to connect.
I know, right? I wonder if they sell those at Walmart. So Reno police are working to determine if there was a malfunction with the holster of the firearm or if any practices are needed to be addressed. The Reno Police Department is committed to the safety and security of the public and is committed to fully understanding what caused this incident and ensuring that this does not happen again. That's what they said in their press release. I'm sure it was fully on purpose because it was the rodeo. I'm just saying that's what that is all about.
Never clear leather in front of clowns, gentlemen.
Never clear leather in front of clowns.
That's what we used to call it in law enforcement, when clearing leather, drawing it out,
That sounds also like sounds like a slogan from Brokeback Mountain.
I could never forget you.
Can't forget you. Let's move on. Let's go back to Florida, if we will. And I think we will. A Florida woman steals an ambulance and leads deputies on a wild chase. Sounds like Saturday night is what it sounds like. She stole the vehicle from a children's hospital in Fort Myers, and a pursuit was captured on video. By the way, I'm trying to get her picture up here to show you exactly what kind of a fine woman this is, but evidently it wanted to highlight it.
Rumor has it she came from a rodeo.
She did. She was
right after she had a bunch of cocaine.
She cleared her leather with a clown and moved on is what happened. My God.
Let me guess, she had a tattoo on her left arm of a giant American eagle right underneath a Nike swoosh.
Yes, right under a Nike swoosh. Let me show you a picture of this woman. Why is this scrolling by itself? It's like my iPad was taken over by mystery scrollers.
It's the government, Tim. They didn't like the fact that you know about the magic bullet.
That's right. Jesse Ventura's hackers over there at the pot company. It won't stay down. That's what she said. Let me see if I can. Can you?
My. Yeah.
Can you see her? There she is right there. I got my finger in her nose.
If anybody was to steal an ambulance from a children's hospital, that's the face.
That's the
right
face
there.
Right there. Yeah. She looks like she's got probably half a kilo up her nose. That's for sure. A Florida woman was arrested after stealing an ambulance from a children's hospital and leading deputies on a wild chase through the streets of Fort Myers, according to the sheriff's office. 30-year-old Ariel Marchand Lecquier, or Lecquier, one or the other, allegedly stole the emergency vehicle from, I believe this says Golisano Children's Hospital Thursday morning, and deputies tracked it via its GPS system to a nearby gas station, according to the Lee County Sheriff's Office. When deputies confronted Marchand Lecquier at the station, she fled. There's a shock. This ambulance is all over the road, and it's running red lights, and it's going to end up killing someone. This is a direct quote. It's purposefully, recklessly driving crazy, a deputy says in a video of the chase released to the sheriff's office. As they pursued the ambulance, deputies said Marchand Lecquier was swerving between lanes, banging into curbs, and nearly flipping the vehicle over.
I imagine upon investigation, once she got back to the PD, the sergeant that's leading this narrative is starting off with, "No one was more surprised than I. When talking with Miss Jacquier, she said that she stole the ambulance to hurry home to New York to go to her family funeral for her uncle, Johnny the Cake," or whatever his name was.
Tony Cakes?
Johnny Cakes. But I mean, at least, if she's blowing through red lights and driving crazy through traffic, I mean, is she really guilty of like blowing red light if she was in an emergency vehicle running lights and sirens?
No, that's an ambulance.
Yeah. So just grand theft. Yeah. She should only be charged on that.
That's right. She pulled over at one point, but when deputies approached, she took off again. She pulled the Benny Hill, turning on the emergency lights. So at least she observed protocol. Deputies halted their pursuit, but a helicopter continued to track her because why not? When she pulled over again, deputies then arrested her. Marshawn Lakier was charged with grand theft of a motor vehicle, leaving the scene of a crash, resisting an officer, fleeing and eluding, and theft of emergency equipment, according to the sheriff's office. No one was injured in the chase, and the ambulance was empty. Thank God. It would suck if someone was sick in the back of that ambulance, that's for sure. But there you go.
I just need to know if while she was in there driving too, if like her inner monologue came out at all and she was like, wee-oo, wee-oo, wee.
She made the siren noise. Boy, that would be horrible, wouldn't it? We move on. A driver was held responsible for hundreds of dollars in road infractions. In this story, here's the story. The driver was fined after his car was stolen. So he gets his car stolen. He's fined $700 after his car is stolen, and he has to pay for the thief's actions afterwards. So not only is his car stolen, but he gets fined afterwards.
That's insane.
That is insane, isn't it? Let's find out a little bit about this poor driver who says a prosecutor's scheduling issue added more insult to injury. So this driver was held responsible for hundreds of dollars in road infractions, even though authorities knew the vehicle had been stolen. A Hyundai Sonata, well, that's why he was fined. He's driving a Hyundai Sonata.
As he should.
Well, yeah. Raced by school zones, went 100 miles an hour in a 35 and was totaled by a teenager, according to authorities. The owner was still on the hook for the road fines, by the way. Here's his quote. Zach Smedley, he should be fined for his name, by the way, just alone. Yeah. Says, my little car went on quite the adventure. He told that to Washington, D.C.'s NBC affiliate, WRC-TV, in October of 2023. They picked a guy and accused me of stuff I can prove I didn't do, and they're saying we're not going to look at that. Give us money, please. I don't know what I can do about that. Smedley, a Maryland resident, said he drove to D.C. to enjoy a leisurely night on the town, but he enjoyed the night. The local DMV admits Smedley's window was smashed. Alleged thieves nabbed the car before cameras caught the vehicle driving erratically. When Smedley returned to his vehicle, the driver only found a pile of broken glass. We had an AirTag in the car so we could see it just kind of bouncing around D.C., the driver told WRC-TV. So wait a minute. So he saw the glass was smashed on his car. He saw his car on an AirTag going around the city, but it was returned to him.
So, I mean, this is, I'd say, half of the time when you have a carjacking like that, where somebody not a full jacking. Like if it's a carjack, usually it ends pretty violent. But these smash and grab vehicle extractions, we'll call it, right? They go for what they known as joyrides. Yeah. And they're going to go and run it around, cause as much chaos as they can, and they usually just kind of park it right back there again. Right. So I could see it.
It says here, police eventually found the car with a smashed window, broken ignition, and trash strewn throughout the back seat. The driver's side mirror was dangling from the door panel with a wrap of tape. Then Smedley was inundated with thousands of dollars in fines from the speedy driving. He successfully fought multiple fines, but the DMV initially left him on the hook for 2 citations. Smedley received collections notice for $660 worth of tickets, even though he appealed all of the tickets. The collections agencies threatened to seize his car if he did not immediately pay. Well, it's broken in half. Take it. His car had already been totaled. He said, I just really need to get in the room with a human who can obviously determine that this is a mistake and fix it, Smedley told local CBS affiliate WUSA TV. I feel like I've done everything right and nothing wrong, and yet I'm on the hook for nearly $700 worth of infractions I didn't commit and wasn't told about. A DMV official told WUSA TV that they were trying to get to the bottom of the incorrect fines. The DMV didn't immediately respond to the U.S. Sun's request for comment. He said, I don't have any updates for the tickets, unfortunately, Smedley told the U.S. Sun in June, 8 months after receiving the collections warnings. Officially, the DMV hasn't done anything to rectify it. I have no record of the tickets being dismissed. However, weeks after the ordeal, Smedley said a local prosecutor called him for an update on the alleged thief who stole his vehicle. The prosecutor said he had to drop the charges against the juvenile because of a scheduling issue.
Wow. So they apprehended him, but then dropped the ball on prosecution.
Right.
And they need to get some kind of restitution for it. So they're going after the victim.
Yep.
I think it's time to quit planet Earth, bro.
Yep. So we just
now, which county, what state, first off, and then county was this again? So I know where to never, ever go in my life.
This was Washington, D.C.
Oh, that explains everything.
It kind of does, doesn't it? Yeah. Now, you're pretty savvy when it comes to online stuff. You saw I know you saw the viral video of this guy, right? This Michigan driver.
Oh, yes.
Okay.
Yep. So
the guy in court who goes to court with the suspended license, or actually he's the judge who is hearing the suspended license guy, and he's calling from his car. Okay. Yes. So this was debunked. Was it last week before? Because it turns out that the guy never had, the guy had a license, it turns out, and that he had supposedly cleared everything up. So his license was valid. That was the story last week. Turns out that there's another addendum to this story. So he claims he had a valid license and that he should have never been suspended, right?
Okay.
So he says, no, I had a valid license. I should have never had a suspended license. I cleared it up. Well, not so fast. Turns out that Michigan driver from the viral court hearing finally got his learner's permit. He did not have a valid license. He had a state ID. So he didn't have a valid license. He was calling from his car with just a state ID. He was driving around. He didn't even have a license, Travis.
Well, I mean, sometimes you just gotta, what's that other viral video? You gotta hawk Tula and spit on that.
Oh, yeah.
And
yeah.
And then just get away with everything.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't understand the level of incompetence that it takes to be that addled of an adult, right?
Oh, yeah.
Driving around for that long, thinking that just a state ID was your driver's license. That means he never took a driver's exam. That means he doesn't understand any of the NYSE certifications. That's along with all the laws of the road. I'm surprised he hasn't killed somebody already.
Right. Well, this Michigan man who went viral for appearing behind the wheel during his virtual court hearing for a driving infraction has at long last obtained his learner's permit. That according to his lawyer. Dion Webster Cox told People that her infamous client, Corey Harris, took a step in the right direction last Friday when he went to the Michigan Secretary of State's office, which handles motor vehicle regulation, and passed a theory test. That's right, a theory test. Harris was filmed by Webster Cox going into the office, taking the test, and dancing outside afterwards. That's right, you got a touchdown dance at the end of it.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that a boy, Blue. That a boy.
An edited and sped up compilation of the clips was posted to Instagram by the lawyer on Monday. Congratulations, yay, she appears to say, laughing. To People, she added, one day does not make the rest of your life. It can change in a day, is what the quote says. The 44-year-old Harris went unwittingly viral after footage of his May 15th hearing was circulated online. In the video, Harris sighs as he pulls into a parking lot, much to the amazement of the Michigan state judge overseeing the proceedings. Mr. Harris, Judge J. Cedric Simpson, said, "Are you driving?" The judge ordered Harris, who had supposedly been cited for driving with a suspended license of previous October, to turn himself into police that evening. Weeks after the motorist spent 2 nights in jail over the infraction, however, the story took a strange twist, with a local ABC affiliate reporting that an apparent clerical error meant that Harris was supposed to have had his suspension lifted back in 2022. Looking at Saginaw County court records, WXYZ, yes, it's a real station, laid out the case that Harris has never been informed of a $125 late fee that was supposed to have been paid to kickstart the final stage of the process to wipe his record clean. Harris told the station that his 15 minutes of fame, which he described as humiliating, could have easily been avoided if not for bureaucratic incompetence. He said, quote, "Always double check behind these workers because they will say that they will do something and they don't do it." Now, he was kind of being, puffed out chest and, oh, yeah, it was somebody else's fault. Right. Yeah. He thought he was vindicated. But Simpson threw a spanner into the works shortly after at a hearing last week. The Daily Beast had reported at the time he informed the court that Harris had never had a driver's license, only a state ID, and in fact had had his driving privileges suspended last year. So not so fast, Mr. Harris. You never had a license. And quite frankly, I just wish he would have said that at the beginning and all of this hoopla could have been put all aside, the judge remarked dryly. Webster Cox, who took over Harris's case after the May 15th hearing, promised Simpson that her client was taking steps to make that matter right. She said that Harris had an appointment to take his learner's permit test later that week. You would think with being this devious that the judge would have doubled down and put him back in jail.
Well, I don't know. Maybe it's good all the way around, right? I can say that we have a 360 degrees of a feel-good story here, right? Okay. Not only did he get his 15 minutes of, humility, but fame, right? Mm-hmm. That then encouraged him to go get his learner's permit and actually be a licensed driver on the road, which is part of the feel-good. Yeah. The other side is I now follow this judge on TikTok. Oh, and he's got his own TikTok channel, and he is pretty entertaining. You should see the Walmart of audience that he has before him. It's quite entertaining to see. Okay, and so it's bringing and driving a lot more attention and focus to that judge in his work he does. So all the way around, I think it's still a good feel good. Yeah, it's helping everybody. It
says here with the permit in hand, a copy which was obtained by People magazine, Harris can take his road test to get fully licensed as soon as July 7th. He's scheduled to go before Simpson once again a month later, at which point his misdemeanor charge could be downgraded to a civil infraction. So you're right. It could be a feel-good story. It could be one of those things where in the end, he gets away with a slap on the wrist. He ends up getting his license. He can move on with his life.
I would like to see the judge personally go down there to the DMV the day he gets issued his license and take a photograph with him.
That'd be something, wouldn't it? Yeah.
And then throw him in jail.
Yeah. Yes. And then throw him in jail and then be like, you thought you got away with it, huh, punk? Too late. Too late. Speaking of getting away with it, let's come back to Minnesota here, where we both are, and talk about a woman who's now facing 30 years in prison after bong water is found during a Minnesota traffic stop.
Yes.
You've heard this story.
I heard this one.
Yeah. Okay. So here's the interesting fact. All right. Here in Minnesota, not only is medical marijuana legal, but now marijuana is legal. So basically, you get stopped with flour or you get stopped with any other substance, they probably won't bust you, right? But bong water is a different substance and is something different entirely. I actually got this story from a listener who sent this to me and said, boy, is this interesting. So here's the story. A North Dakota woman was pulled over by deputies in Minnesota. She could face up to 30 years in prison after a bong containing water that tested positive for methamphetamine was found in her car. Not marijuana. Jessica Beskey of Fargo was stopped in Polk County, Minnesota on May 8th for speeding. That, according to the Minnesota Reformer. Deputies allegedly smelled marijuana coming from her car and searched the vehicle. Beskey wrote in court documents obtained by NBC News that she was found to be in possession of 3 pieces of drug paraphernalia that tested positive for meth. The deputies allegedly found a bong, a glass jar containing a crystal substance, and pipes. Beskey wrote that under Minnesota law, drug paraphernalia is legal, but she was arrested and charged with first-degree possession. Last year, drug paraphernalia was decriminalized, even if it contains drug residue. But according to Minnesota Reformer, the changes did not roll back an existing law that treats bong water as a controlled substance. And anyone convicted of first-degree possession crimes could be sentenced up to 30 years in prison, a fine of no more than $1 million, or both.
Now, in hearing that, I had to go put my old cop hat back on from way back 08, 09, right?
Okay.
So forever ago. And, in back in Kansas, where I was a police officer, the laws were extremely strict when it came to marijuana. And the burning odor of marijuana was the destruction of evidence, which gave us exigent circumstances to not require a warrant or anything else to then enter your home or your vehicle and try to stop that destroying of it, right?
Okay.
But if it's not criminal anymore, if marijuana is not a crime for possession or smoking or anything, well, then the odor of marijuana does not give you the right to enter that vehicle. And I think law enforcement might have overstepped their bounds here and crossed a Fourth Amendment right violation.
Really?
Because their reasoning in that story said they detected the odor of marijuana.
Right.
But marijuana isn't illegal.
That's right.
So if it's not illegal, you don't have precedent or PC to enter that vehicle then.
But if she has North Dakota plates, she doesn't get reciprocity in Minnesota, does she? Because it's not legal in North Dakota.
Right, but she's in the state of Minnesota where she was pulled over, right?
Yeah.
So it's like if you, before Minnesota legalized it, if you went to Colorado or you went to Arizona and you might have Minnesota plates, they might stop you and ask to, search your vehicle or whatever. You can always say no, right? But if you were consuming it in those states, it wasn't illegal. Even though you're not a resident of that state, you consumed it within the boundaries of those states. So it's not illegal there, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you return home with it, that's a different story, which chances are they probably thought she was trafficking something across the border, but you have to be able to prove that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So then it comes down to, okay, what gave them the exigent circumstances or the probable cause to enter that vehicle? I think her lawyer is going to have a really good field day with this one because their reasoning was, we detected the odor of marijuana. Well, guess what? It wasn't illegal in the state where you stopped her for that.
Yeah. Interesting. So in the court documents, Beskey wrote that the bong and other items found were paraphernalia. She also asked that her vehicle and cash she won at the casino be returned to her because it is not subject to forfeiture. They also took that in the arrest. Beskey told the Minnesota Reformer that her charges against her didn't make sense. It's against common sense, she said. It's against everybody's common sense. I don't know that it's against common sense. Like Travis said, it may be against her Fourth Amendment rights. So there you go. Common sense, not necessarily, but against rights.
And moral of the story, guys, don't smoke meth.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Don't smoke meth out of your marijuana bong. And that's probably the answer to that deal.
If Methany wasn't smoking that bong, she would have been fine because they would have just been like, oh, there's THC in there, and it would have been a nothing story. Right. But Methany was smoking meth out of her bong, and now she's in a pickle. Don't do meth.
That's a good one. Just smoke pickles. Yeah, we would have been fine. Yeah. Let's move on to our next story. A Jeffco sheriff says that a man shoplifted bolt cutters from Walmart and then stole a kid's e-bike locked up in front of a store. It's a Daily Double today.
I'm not even like shocked. I'm kind of impressed. Right?
Yeah. That's not even a dumb criminal. That's kind of a smart criminal.
Yeah, he's like, I'm not going to use a tool that they could link back to me.
That's right. I'm going to use a stolen tool to get a stolen bike. We go to Jefferson County, Colorado, where the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office is seeking the public's help in identifying an alleged bike thief who on Wednesday shoplifted bolt cutters to steal a boy's e-bike. The e-bike theft occurred last Wednesday around 1:15 p.m. outside a Walmart on C470 and West Boyles Avenue. The sheriff's office said the 12-year-old boy rode his bike to Walmart to buy fishing tackle. While the victim was inside the store, the suspect saw the bike, went into the store, stole bolt cutters, and used them to steal the boy's e-bike. That, according to the sheriff's office. The suspected bike thief is described as a white male. He was wearing a blue T-shirt with the words Columbia and a logo on the back, and a black and white baseball hat with a logo. If you identify the man, you're supposed to call the Jefferson County Sheriff's tip line. You can remain anonymous, by the way, in case you know the guy. So
well, for the viewers, I was just examining myself as I'm a white male in a blue shirt.
Oh, yeah. There you go. Do you have Columbia on it?
Bikes. No, there's no Columbia.
Okay. Just checking, just in case. We're getting into the food section of today's Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals. And by the way, in 2 stories will be to the not safe for work category. But we always have a food section here because we're foodies. So you got to do
like
that.
Food.
Yeah, food is a good thing. Yeah.
Especially cake.
Tony Cakes, that's right. Well, we didn't officially, Tony Cakes wasn't making us anything, so that wasn't technically the food section. Although, rest in peace, Tony Cakes. Just saying.
R.I.P. You're a real one. Well,
you're a real one, Tony Cakes. We appreciate you and everything you gave to us, including tooth decay and rotten guts. We talk about a man who is charged with murdering his roommate, Travis. Not his roommate, Travis, but his roommate, Travis. Amid reported arguments over a Taco Bell meal. Now, I don't know how many arguments you've had, Travis, over Taco Bell, but I don't find that to be argumentative.
Yeah, I mean, when you're with roommates, eventually everything starts to annoy you, right? Like there's that honeymoon period of like 6 months where everybody's like best friends, and eventually everything irritates you. I imagine these guys have been roomies for at least like 4 years, and he's just like looking for an excuse to argue about Taco Bell.
I mean, if your roommate's that hungry, throw him the chalupa. I mean, it's not, and there's nothing at Taco Bell that's that expensive, right?
Yeah, ever since they stopped putting kangaroo meat in there, I mean.
Ew, it wasn't kangaroo meat McDonald's? I mean,
it might have been.
It's horse meat, isn't it? At Taco Bell, it's kangaroo meat at McDonald's. You got to keep your meat straight here, brother. I'm just telling you, right? 54-year-old Mark Newsom, which if he's 54... I can't imagine why he's got a 72-year-old roommate, but that's where we're going here. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
54. Look, first of all, you've got to see this. This is unbelievable. Look at does this guy look like he's been ridden hard and put away wet?
He looks like he's already, like he just got out of 3 stints in prison.
Really? Look at that. I mean, yeah. 54-year-old Mark Newsom, who looks like he's 72, allegedly punched his 72-year-old roommate Dale Mitchell to death over a chalupa.
I mean, it's not hard to do when the guy's in his 70s.
True.
You could probably hit him with a mild punch and it would probably kill him.
And he's hungry. I mean,
yeah.
It's probably not, he doesn't have proper nutrition on top of it. A Michigan man has been accused of killing his roommate earlier this year after a verbal argument over a Taco Bell meal allegedly turned physical. 54-year-old Mark Newsom charged with second-degree murder in the fatal January 31st beating of his roommate in Roseville. The Macomb County Prosecutor's Office said on Tuesday, June 18th, the victim was identified as 72-year-old Dale Mitchell. The Macomb Daily and Detroit TV station WJBK reported that the alleged argument began over a Taco Bell food order. According to prosecutors, Newsom was bound over to Macomb County Circuit Court by Roseville District Court Judge Joseph Bedecker on Tuesday. He is being held without bond in the Macomb County Jail. Newsom's attorney did not immediately respond to an email seeking comment on the case. Macomb County prosecutor Peter J. Lucido said of this important case involving Taco Bell meat, Travis, we are committed to ensuring that justice is served for the victim and his family. Newsom and Mitchell were residents at a boarding house on Waldorf Street at the time of the alleged altercation. The prosecutor's office claims that Newsom punched Mitchell in the head several times before Mitchell died of his injuries. A third and fourth roommate spoke to WJBK in February before Mitchell's death. Roommate Bob McQuaid said, "Oh God, it scared the hell out of me. It really did." Their roommate Larry Melton added, "There was blood all over upstairs." McQuaid continued to think a fight over food would escalate into murder. It's inconceivable. Both Melton and McQuaid told the news outlet they were sleeping when the alleged fight between Newsom and Mitchell started. "Why are you doing this?" Melton said. Why are you doing this? Leave me alone. Quit. Please quit. That's what I heard. McQuaid called the situation senseless. "I trusted Mark as my friend. I could never believe he would have done something like that," he said. At the time, Lucido said, "If we've come to grips with life about fighting and killing somebody over a taco or food itself, there's got to be more to life than that." Well, you would think.
Yeah.
It's Taco Bell.
I'm sitting there in my head like the whole time, like how did this actually look as the scene was playing out? You know, and I'm thinking in my head, like, this guy's got to have some stupid comical voice, almost like a Mickey Mouse mixed with Mike Tyson, just like, I'm never supposed to have it back to the phone. They only got 4. These beers, I ain't taking this anymore. And then just starts pounding, you know, like it has to be.
It has to be.
I accept nothing else. This man must speak like this to be that so angry and insecure about a Taco Bell order.
Right.
He's got to talk like a goofball.
He does. Yeah. It would have been a lot easier to walk away, is what one of the roommates said. Per the Macomb Daily, Mitchell is remembered by loved ones as a kind, gentle soul. He was reportedly becoming increasingly fragile as his health deteriorated. Newsom is scheduled for a July 2nd arraignment. Court records do not indicate that he has entered a plea. How do you enter anything but guilty?
Your Honor, I'd like to plead not insanity, but hungry.
I guess that's a plea as well, right? I plead guilty by reason of empty stomach.
Somebody should have gave him a Snickers.
Right? Now that's a Snickers commercial. I guess, right? We have another, again, beating by reason of hunger.
Oh, wow.
We talk about an ex-con in a domestic honey bun arrest.
Ooh.
Honey buns, is that worth taking a beating over, a honey bun?
It is in prison. There are 3 things that you absolutely would murder somebody for in prison. Ramen noodles, honey buns, and stamps.
Stamps? Really?
Stamps. That's their currency. There's a big currency out there. Yeah.
Okay. This accused man, who's all of 47 years old, has a bear claw tattoo. Evidently, he's darn serious about honey buns.
He's the nephew of Tony Cakes.
Tony Cakes' nephew.
His name is Barry the Bear Claw.
I was going to say, if this is Tony Cakes' nephew, someone's been sneaking over the line.
Yeah. Well, you know, it wasn't all angel food cake.
It wasn't all angel food. Sometimes there's a little devil's food mixed up in that angel food. We go to Florida, where an ex-con has landed behind bars again after allegedly striking his girlfriend in the face while arguing over a honey bun. This is very Florida. Investigators say 47-year-old Andre Eason and the 39-year-old victim were in their car on Friday when the 4 a.m. pastry kerfuffle began. By the way, Pastry Kerfuffle is the name of my new band.
Yeah, either that or a good racehorse. Yeah.
Yeah. Pastry Kerfuffle. And coming around the corner is Pastry Kerfuffle. Followed by Hot Dog Water.
And Tony the Cakes.
And Tony Cakes. Tony Cakes followed by Hot Dog Water, followed by Pastry Kerfuffle.
And Tony the Cakes was ahead.
until he got hit by that unfortunate. Yeah, I don't know. At the time, the couple who live in a hotel were outside the Walmart Supercenter in St. Petersburg. Of course, this happened in front of a Walmart.
Where else would it be?
No, I don't know. During the honey bun dispute, Eason allegedly smacked the victim in the face, causing minor redness. This, according to an arrest affidavit. It does not specify the nature of the honey bun clash, though history indicates that one of the parties likely consumed the honey bun before the other could partake. Eason was subsequently arrested for domestic battery, a misdemeanor, and booked into the county jail. He was released from custody later that day and ordered to have no contact with his girlfriend of 6 months. The couple's relationship began roughly after Eason was released from state prison earlier this year, described in court records as self-employed. The convicted felon's solo practice previously included the sale of fentanyl and methamphetamine, which resulted in his jailing following an undercover narcotics investigation. I guess that would be his self-employment. Eason's rap sheet also includes convictions for aggravated assault, theft, and disorderly intoxication. When booked into custody, jailers have noted that Eason has teardrops inked below his right eye, so I guess maybe he's killed a guy or two, as well as a tattoo of a bear claw, which might not refer to the sugary delicacy.
Well, and the second part of the report that they didn't include in there is that once the domestic occurred, she then ran across the Walmart parking lot to the children's hospital, where she then stole an ambulance.
Yes, there you go. And then our story continues. See? So it was just a crazy day all the way around. So there you go. It's time now for our Not Safe for Work part of the program. For this, we need to put the children to bed. So that's right. Oh, yeah. You might want to unbutton your top button there, Travis, and get comfortable. So put the kids to bed. Turn down your listening device if you're at work, or put in your earbuds. We'll give you 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and we'll start Not Safe for Work. So we start out our first story here. We only have 2 stories for Not Safe for Work today. We start out with an 18-year-old woman who met a guy on a dating app and then got cold feet, Travis, and decided to call 911.
Oh, okay.
Little extreme.
So I'm assuming there's going to be a lot more than just a fake 911 call charge here.
Maybe. Let me show you the woman who decided to call 911 here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure she gets all the swipes on Bumble.
She's a Barbie girl living in a Barbie world. Just saying. After matching with a man on a dating app, an Iowa woman, yes, we're going to Iowa. Did that shock you when I said that?
It kind of did, because almost everything seems to come out of Florida. So I was a little shocked.
Yeah. An Iowa woman exchanged texts with him before arranging to meet in person at her residence. This was last week. But when Samaya Thomas, who's all of 18 years old, got cold feet, she dialed 911 in a remarkably harebrained bid to avoid an in real life interaction. The kids call it an IRL interaction.
Oh, is that what they call it?
That's what they call it. It's an IRL interaction. That according to police. As detailed in a criminal complaint, Thomas, who lives in an Iowa City suburb, called police to report that her abusive ex-boyfriend had shown up outside her residence and was sending her threats via Snapchat to hit, punch, kick, and stab her.
Oh, wow.
You don't want to do that, kids. That's probably not the way to get out of a date, especially an online date you just set up. Thomas claimed that she had known this man for 2 years and that she was pregnant with his baby.
Oh, man. This sounds like the recipe for a Maury episode.
Yeah, we're getting deep in it now.
Oh.
Officers responding to Thomas's residence encountered a male leaving the scene and began an in-depth investigation about the reports being made. The man who was detained by police explained that he began speaking with Thomas just over a week ago on a dating app and provided text messages that showed he was being honest and he really did just meet this female. Okay, so he was being on the up and up with police. After multiple interviews with police, Thomas admitted she had been lying, claiming she got cold feet on meeting him and no longer wanted to. She fabricated her tales of abuse because she didn't think officers would help, so she made up this call and the events that she had described.
Oh, Lord.
Yeah.
Ladies, don't do this.
Yeah, bad form.
I had I would say a similar, well, way worse incident in my time in law enforcement, where we had a woman call about a rape. And she had claimed that she was picked up at gunpoint by this black male with dreadlocks and a white Cadillac in downtown Junction City, and then goes into details of all sorts of things that apparently happened for 2 weeks of being held. And after questioning, turns out this never happened. And for 8 hours, every badge in the Tri-County area was looking for a black male with dreadlocks and a white Cadillac, thinking that he's abducting people at gunpoint. The danger that people get put in because of these lies from people is insane. And the best that law enforcement can do is take them at their word of what's reported, and they're acting on their best intentions to try to stop these things. That story makes me sick to my stomach, because I remember what it was like having to be on that enforcement side of things, trying to sift through all the lies.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's horrible.
Now, after being read her rights, Thomas, cops reported, explained she pulled the 911 gambit because she didn't want the mail here and felt we wouldn't be able to do anything if she just called us normally. Thomas was arrested for placing a false 911 call and making a fake report of an indictable offense, both of which are misdemeanors. Thomas was released from the county jail earlier yesterday following her initial court appearance. So there you go. And our final story for today on Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminals has to do with a lifelike body that was not a lifeless body.
Ooh, this one sounds fun.
I'll explain. This is interesting. A woman was found in an abandoned Porsche. All right. And I say woman in quotes. Here's the story. We go to Texas when a Texas tow company worker discovered what appeared to be a woman's body in the front passenger seat of an abandoned Porsche. He dialed 911 to report his concerning find. The body had been wrapped in blankets, though hair on its head was visible from outside the vehicle. Okay.
I think I know where this is going.
So this is one of those things where it could be a scary situation, right?
Mm-hmm.
When police responded Wednesday to Ray's Wrecker Service in Vidor, which is a city just east of Beaumont, Texas, they decided to apply for a warrant to search the vehicle. A red 2000 Porsche Boxster with Ohio plates had been left outside a Kingdom Hall of Jehovah's Witnesses church. Cops noticed that the coupe's passenger door had an interior padlock on it. Looking towards the passenger side floorboard, I saw what appeared to be part of a leg, stated Officer Matthew Custer. That in an incident report detailing the death investigation. That's in quotes. Okay. Right. After waiting several hours for the warrant to be signed, officers entered the vehicle to determine if they were investigating a real crime. Instead, Travis, the victim in question was a real doll.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. The full-size realistic sex toy was subsequently described as an adult novelty mannequin when Police Chief Rod Carroll announced that the lifelike body was not a lifeless body. The sex doll was left in the Porsche, where, as it was seen in this picture that I'm looking at, was photographed wearing two hats and had a pair of sunglasses pushed above its unblinking eyes. The doll's brown locks cascaded down the front of its long sleeve t-shirt. Let me show you a picture of this thing here. This is
like Weekend at the Bernie's.
This is what police were looking at.
The guy could afford a Porsche, but he couldn't afford the better doll.
Yeah, it's very cheesy looking. I tell you what, I'll put a picture of the sex doll in the article in the description of this program, so you guys can get a look at it and see what exactly we're looking at. It's pretty funny.
So that's great.
There you go. So that is how we wrap up Dumb Crime, Stupid Criminal. It is obviously, I can't believe they didn't walk to the other side of this and actually see that the face is exposed.
Right.
So you can tell that it's a doll, obviously. So, there you go. All right. So tell people again, one more time here, Travis, the name of the show and how they can look you up.
Sure. The American Council for Truth in Journalism. You can find us at 1776returns.com is our website for the show itself. You can go to Rumble or X, as they call it now. It used to be Twitter. Or you can go to Facebook and find us again at the American Council for Truth in Journalism.
All right. Well, Travis Thorpe, I want to thank you so much for joining us. And Mally and Jess, thank you as well. So there you go. So it was one of those things where you came in a pinch and helped me out, brother. I appreciate you very much.
Always, brother. No worries. Thanks for having me on today.
Thank you for being on. And folks, I want to remind you tomorrow, Supernatural News. And then Thursday of this week, we're talking Ogopogo with Jason Hewlett. So that's coming up on Thursday. So we'll be talking about Ogopogo. So, yeah.
Outstanding.
Yeah. So we got a big week this week. So that's this week on Darkness Radio. So thank you so much for joining us today on the best in true crime podcasting. You've been listening to True Crime Tuesday.